and welcome, Dolphins fans. Thanks for joining us today on this edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I'm Chris Perkins. I'm your host, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Miami Dolphins columnist. This is David Furones, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Miami Dolphins writer. That is Dave Hyde, your South Florida Sun Sentinel columnist. As usual, we invite everybody to tune in on our chat, leave a message, ask a question. Most intelligent Dolphins conversation you will find anywhere. And if you missed any part of this show, I would like to remind you, you can catch it on Amazon, Spotify, anywhere that you get your podcasts. Today, we are talking preseason game number 2, Dolphins against Washington. How long should the starters play? Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Ramsey. How long do you want to see these guys out there? Also, what would you consider a successful Dolphins season? Do they have to win 2 playoff games? 1 playoff game? Just make the playoffs. And we're going to ask, is Mike McDaniel revolutionizing training camp, or is he just being soft on the Dolphins? There's an ocean of possibilities. Let's dive in. All right, gentlemen. So,
can you check your mic pack to turn it on?
So segment 1, we're going to talk about the Dolphins and preseason. How much should the starters play? Dave Hyde, what do you think? How long should Tua play here?
Well, let me get my
technical difficulties.
Yeah, so with all of us.
You know what? Let's start here. Who else is going to play on the offense? I mean, are you going to go with the starting offensive line, such as it is, including Teron Armstead? Yeah. Probably not. Are you going to go with your starting receiver? So if you're going to play Tua, you got to play everybody. Okay, so I would like him to play a couple series, 10 plays, something like that, something to get your feet wet, rhythm going. But if you do that, you got to play everybody. You can't pick and choose who's going to play, and that's they've again Teron Armstead. I don't think he's going to play, and I don't blame him for not playing him. Right. Isaiah Wynn, we haven't seen all year, and the question is, your starting center's out. Right. So, in theory, 3/5 of your offensive line that you would like to have isn't going to be there. Will they be there for the regular? 2 of them probably won't be there for the start of the regular season. So, but I'd like to get them 10 plays.
Furones, do you put Tua out there if with 3 starters on the offensive line or 2 starters on the offensive line?
Well, I think we already know we are going to see Tua. He said he wants to play, and Mike McDaniel has even indicated, as transparently as he has as head coach of the Dolphins in the preseason, that he will be playing the starters. Now, the thing is, you won't be playing all the starters because all the guys who are dealing with even all the minor injuries that we always hear Mike McDaniel talk about, he's keeping them safe out of harm's way. So, yeah, you're not going to see a Jalen Ramsey. You're not going to see a Teron Armstead. You're not going to see a Javon Holland at this point, or Jordan Poyer, who just came over. So, yeah, Tua will get some, Jalen Waddle. So Tua will get some time. Maybe this is as close to a dress rehearsal as we see. This is the last preseason game at Hard Rock Stadium. Yep. So it's the last chance for the fans to get a cheap ticket to watch the team at home before then they wrap up the preseason in Tampa the following week. So where maybe that one is just a series or 2. But maybe this is where Mike McDaniel gives them a little bit of a free range where it's you go through the first quarter and maybe a little bit into the second. And this is where the starters get as much playing time. That would be consistent with last year, week 2 of the preseason, and then week 3 maybe just get a little.
Here's my question though: they got a lot of work on Thursday, going against Washington, and I saw where Philadelphia's coach said, "Look, they just played 89 plays against New England Patriots, and so I'm holding the starter." The question is, how much work did all these starters get against Washington, and do you want them coming back a day and a half later and playing?
A lot of the starters were held out against Washington. Well, not a lot, but Jalen Ramsey, as you mentioned, Teron Armstead. So I'm thinking that these guys have to play a little bit in the preseason. Like you say, Jalen Ramsey, do you think, Ramsey, I guess he's nursing something minor, as Mike McDaniel always says. They're always day-to-day at something minor, right? And then they miss 7 straight practices.
But when you hear him week to week, then that's
week to week's the issue, like with Aaron Brewer.
Right,
is
right.
Week to week.
Different.
Aaron Brewer.
Right.
Oh, excuse me, yeah.
Yeah. But Furones, do you want to see Jalen Ramsey out there in Game 2, knowing that he's probably not going to play in Game 3, and so now he doesn't play the whole preseason? This is Jalen Ramsey, so he doesn't need a lot, but don't you want to see him out there a little bit?
No, you don't need to see him out there in the preseason.
All right,
In fact, yeah, last year, remember, second practice of training camp,
Yeah.
he went down with the knee injury. It took him into late October when he finally came back, and he came back in a big way. His first regular season game back. I don't think he needs the preseason action. You know what you're getting in Jalen Ramsey.
Before we go any further, hello to Peter McDowell, Grandizer 12. Pretty boy, you are back. Welcome back, pretty boy.
It's not a pretty boy. As you saw.
Roger Allman, Bernard Mohorn, who says the volume is low. So I'm going to try to do something about that, Bernard. Matt Newton, thanks to everybody. Glad to see you. Let's talk about some different players in preseason. Do you want to see Zach Sealer? Do you want to see Calais Campbell? Do you want to see Kendall Lamb? Do you want to see Devon Achane? Do you want to see Mostert? Do you want to see everybody? What do you, or is Mike McDaniel coaching scared here?
Well, let's talk about the start of the season. Dolphins are one of the teams I think they need a fast start. Yep. You could argue Kansas City doesn't need a fast start. Right. San Francisco, you can go.
Who was 6-6 last year?
Well, Buffalo might this year because they're but the Dolphins, they have 2 games within 4 days, Sunday, Thursday, a very unusual start. Yeah. So the question becomes getting them ready for that game. It's not that I need to see Mostert or anybody in particular in that regard, but what gets them ready for these 2 games, because you want to win the opener, Jacksonville, possibly contending a playoff spot with them. Then comes Buffalo, the team you got to get over. Right. And this, if you don't do it this season, when will you? Because Buffalo has taken a roster hit. They just lost Milano at linebacker.
No Stephon Diggs.
They've had because of the Josh Allen salary and others. Yep. Now it's the bills coming due for them, just as it will for the Dolphins coming up. But who do I want to see? I want to see Chop Robinson. We've seen him go against second-team guys most of the camp, and there's been flashes. Okay, you see why they took. Yep. But let's see him against the first team. I think you'd want to see that more than a Sealer or a Calais Campbell. I mean, he's 37. You don't need to see much of him. It's more how do they feel about getting ready.
Yeah. Furones, who do you want to see?
Yeah, I'm with Dave. Chop Robinson is the first name that comes up. He's the guy you would have wanted to see number 1 for the first preseason game, but then he would have played, but it seems like he was just dealing with something small, something minor again. So that's why you didn't see him. And then, your second round pick and your 4th round pick, Patrick Paul and Jalen Wright were the ones that stood out in that first preseason game. But we still haven't gotten that exhibition look at Chop Robinson. So he's the first guy I want to see. But since this game will be sort of maybe a little bit of that dress rehearsal, then it's just the whole orchestration of the offense with a lot of those starters in there. Those first few series, that will be huge to just see how it runs, and maybe some of what Anthony Weaver does with these new pieces that he has now as he comes over to Miami, and whoever does play, just how he ends up using them in games. Of course, he won't show all his cards, but just to see some of those things.
Roger Allman says, hello from Utah. CP, you're my favorite Dolphins channel, even though you drive me nuts, my last name, but love your guests. So let's talk about my column.
Your last name?
Allman, his last name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Speaking of driving people nuts, I was saying the offensive line should be good enough. Do you want to see this offensive line in preseason? Are you convinced that you've seen enough? What do you think about offensive line as it relates to the Washington game?
Well, because of I mentioned before, they're out essentially 3 starters in training camp. Right. So I want to see more of it. I mean, Eichenberg at center. We saw him last year. I mean, the 2 guards. There's the question, and the issue. It's a good game for them to play against, just as the practice was. Washington has 2 very good defensive tackles. So this is a good measuring board. Where are you at? I would like to see him in the game.
Yeah. Furones, Matt Newton says Furones is like, what's a laptop? Where's the laptop? What's going on here?
He's old school.
Yeah, I know he's got the notebook out here.
I have some notes, but I mean, we're in studio. I mean, usually I have the laptop open for the show when we do it over over our broadcasting system. But
This is just a prop. This is just a prop, by the way. It really, it's not,
you have nothing going on this.
Right, you got
So-
no cord or anything. Right,
Yeah, Perk,
right.
you need it because you're watching.
because I'm lost.
Yeah,
Let's
YouTuber
admit it, I'm
comments
lost.
and-
Right. Dana Boyce says offensive line is the biggest question mark of the season. Do you agree with that, David Furones?
Biggest question mark? I mean, yeah, the interior of the offensive line. So you lost Robert Hunt and Isaiah Wynn, who won the left guard spot in a competition with the other guys who are back in there competing for now the 2 guard spots. He is still on the physically unable to perform list, and we've seen him work some on the side, but still no imminent return date in sight for him. So, you're using 2 of the guys, and now 3 once you have Aaron Brewer out and Liam Eichenberg has to slide back to center, that were the backup reserve guards who are serviceable. Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg. That's another thing I want to see in this preseason game is what strides have they made since last year in a game-like setting. So we've seen them kind of up and down. I think like the joint practice against Washington, a little bit up and down for them. Obviously, that's a tough test. Going against Deron Payne, going against Jonathan Allen of the Commanders. So I don't know how much those guys will play in this game, but yeah, we need to see the strides that these guys on the interior offensive line have made. And you get all 3 of them, Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg, Lester Cotton coming back, that missed out on that competition to start, still got thrown into a lot of playing time, and now they will needed to start, along with Jack Driscoll, who was a free agent that came in and is trying to get himself into that mix.
Furones, let me ask you something that I said to Dave Hyde and Joe Rose this morning on the Joe Rose show. Do the Dolphins take interior offensive line seriously enough? Chris Greer said we're worried more about offensive line than them. I think Aaron Brewer, correct me if I'm wrong, is the only true center that they've gotten, right? Connor Williams was a converted center. Liam Eichenberg had never played center. Jack Driscoll has never played center. At guard, you had converted tackles, right, with Rob Hunt and Liam Eichenberg, and then Rob Jones is undrafted. So do they take center and guard seriously? Are you going to draft anybody real high? You take a guard and move him to center. You take tackles and move him to guard. One guy is undrafted. Do they take interior line seriously, or are we worried about it too much? And
to add to that, Aaron Brewer is also a converted center from guard because Tennessee moved him over to center just last season. So now that's where he came in. He had a great season at center for Tennessee and is a good scheme fit for the Dolphins there with his ability to move, his athleticism at the position. But, certainly they're not taking it as seriously as the Carolina Panthers are in spending 5 years, $100,000 or $100 million. On Robert Hunt, prioritizing going inside out, still the traditional way of looking at it, tackles first on the offensive line. We have a first-round pick, which I think you still need to be, and also just trusting in the system. Mike McDaniel is just finding the right fits between himself, offensive coordinator Frank Smith, and O-line coach Butch Berry, which you finally have some continuity at the O-line coach position, 2 years running for the first time in ages. So I think they trust in their ability to develop who they have, and then also the timing of the offense with Tua getting the ball out quick like he has had to do really his entire career, including last year, and that'll keep him protected and the sack numbers, pressure numbers low.
I got to admit, I don't understand Chris Greer's comments there because let's look at what they've invested. The nice free agent contract for Connor Williams, second-round pick, Rob Hunt. Now they got Eichenberg, who they spent a second and third round pick playing inside. So they can say, I think Mike McDaniel's a masterful job coaching around problem, and then that fits into Tua, not letting him get hit, fits into the speed at receiver. But if they had hit on these draft picks and everything, and all of a sudden they got powerful guards and center, and Connor Williams still at center. One of the mysteries of the offseason to me is he's about to start for Seattle. And I thought he was so hurt that this whole season might have been wiped out. So it's very bizarre how that all played out. But if they had hit on all these investments in the interior of the line, they would be using that as a weapon. Instead, they're having to coach around it.
One more question on the preseason game against Washington. We've got a couple of people asking here about Ogba, and you guys brought up Chop, the pass rush. And you've got 2 good quarterbacks to open the season in Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen. You got to figure Jalen Phillips will probably be on a snap count, right? For game 1 at least. Can you count on Chop Robinson? Can you count on Ogba? Can you count on Quentin Bell? Can you count on Mo Camara? What is that pass rush going to look like for those first 2 games? And should you spend more time in the preseason and preseason games getting that pass rush some game time?
I think you've seen enough from Chop Robinson to feel like you have something in him. So now how that'll translate now into the regular season, you still have to see it. He's got the athletic tools, the abilities, and I know he has to convert some of those pressures that he had in college now into sacks. So that'll be the big thing for him. Emmanuel Ogbah has come out with a vengeance to reacclimate himself in this Dolphins defense. Still think, well, we're not seeing too much out of Mohamed Kamara yet. Right. Quentin Bell, we thought we had something early in camp. He's been kind of quiet since then. So, just rusher by rusher, that's how I'm looking at it. You want Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb there as your starting combination. And then Chop Robinson coming in. It hurt when you lost Shaq Barrett to retirement. You thought you had a veteran there, but this unit it'll provide somewhat of a pass rush, but I think in that joint setting we've kind of seen it slow down. Yes. It hasn't been as effective. So
if you were to ask me what the big question for me going into the season is not the offense, it's the defensive line. Between injuries, between losing Christian Wilkins and relying on almost by committee, Calais Campbell had 19 pressures last year. That's a big number. Wilkins had 23. The question is, okay, 37, where's he going to be at the later in the season? But the whole mixture of new guys, injuries, counting on a rookie who he's looked good, but again he's going to get backups. So now you're going to get starters. How's Chop Robinson going to look? If I'm an offense like the Bills' offense, and you can go power or you can go to this is a place they're going to attack and see what the Dolphins have there right from the start.
Yep. Cap for Life. We are live. We are in studio, and I'm wearing pants. I'm not wearing shorts. I'm wearing jeans. Cap
Prove
for
it.
Life.
Prove it.
Can I see this? I'm wearing pants. I'm wearing pants.
That's enough skin there.
That's enough. I'm telling you, I'm wearing pants here. All right, we're going to move on to segment 2 here. What is a successful season for the Dolphins? Hyde, I'm going to let you take this first. What's a successful season?
Well, they got to contend for a Super Bowl. Now, and not enough of this, they made the playoffs. Right. Look, they tricked the system. They tanked 2 years, got all these draft picks and cheap contracts, and then they spent money to the point the last 3 years they've had the least draft capital of anybody in NFL history. So this is their window before the big bills come due. If they don't do it this year, when will they do it? So contend for a Super Bowl. Let's start here. Get the home field playoff advantage. This would be the year they do jump over the Bills. The Jets are a threat in August. Will they be a threat when they play them in late November and the end of the season? But if the Dolphins don't do it this year, then this whole 6 years has been another just tacking on to the previous 2 decades of problems.
That's rough. Furones, successful season.
I'm with you, Dave Hyde. It is to win in the playoffs finally. We've seen enough of, now we're happy because we have a playoff appearance, getting the 6 seed, the 7 seed, going on the road, and it's better than the previous 20 years of Dolphins football. Yeah, we get that. Yep. But now it is finally time to take the next step. You need to win a playoff game. You need to now contend for a deep run first. So it starts by winning a playoff game, which helps a lot if you have a home playoff game, which you do by winning the division. Yep. So you have to beat the Buffalo Bills first and take the AFC East from them and then go from there. It's what I'm writing in our season preview story. This year, it's all about winning in the playoffs. So it's why Mike McDaniel, he set meetings this offseason at 24 minutes to the hour to remind everyone of that 24 number. That's how many years the Dolphins have been without a playoff victory. Yep. So you just drill that into everyone's mind in the offseason, early in the year. So then when it becomes that narrative at the end of the year, in the postseason, everyone's already had that in their mind ingrained, and they know what they're dealing with. It's why not only that, but Tyreek Hill, who had those 2,000-yard aspirations of the past, he said his personal goal is now a team goal. It is to win in the playoffs and help this new team that he's been on the last 2 years after winning and having the playoff success in Kansas City. It's now to come to Miami and start winning in the playoffs. Tua Tagovailoa for all his accolades and earning that new contract. Heavy is the crown for him. Now he knows the next step for him is to win in the postseason. So I think everyone is aware of the stakes. Everyone knows what it is. It's time to win in the postseason.
I got a question. I keep hearing this at the Dolphin camp. I've heard it from a few people. Heavy is the crown. I mean, they don't have a. What's this coming from? Where is this coming from?
It's a financial crown.
The Midas touch. They're getting gold. Okay,
Right, exactly.
all right. I'm just wondering. I heard too. I think Mike say it.
Yeah.
I had a couple other guys, and I'm like, what crown are we talking about? Not the AFC's crown. Certainly not the AFC crown.
No.
And not a Super Bowl crown.
No.
So what?
Well, it's so heavy when you're trying to take it from someone else. It's hard to move.
All right.
That's the weight involved.
Okay, I got it then. I would
It's
get.
what everyone's saying nowadays. Like iron sharpens iron.
That's what the kids are saying. Yeah. Peter McDowell says,
wonder why I
win the
didn't
division. Win the division. We need to take over the AFC East, get home field, and go on a playoff run. Let me ask you guys this. Last year, Tua mentioned we want to win a Super Bowl. I got excited. I love to hear that kind of talk around here. This year, it seems like the goalpost has been moved. Let's just win a playoff game. Meetings at 24. Tua says we're focused on winning a playoff game. Tyreek, we're focused on winning a playoff game. Where did the Super Bowl talk go? Was all this just to win a playoff game? Talks.
You know what? I would like to
hear.
hear them say, let's win the AFC East. Because if you win the AFC East, that sets up everything you need to do. The Super. I don't want to hear Super Bowl talk from this team.
That's
I
why you
don't.
lifted all them weights.
But it's absurd that everybody in contention. They haven't been in contention. They haven't been in contention. They've made the playoffs and got blown out. So let's be reasonable. I love the way they're talking this year. Yeah. They sound like a team, a mature team that understands how hard it can be, and they've had some seasons they didn't expect. They know they got to be better in big games. And at the end of big games especially, you hear that. So to me, they sound like a team that's had some pain, and they're ready to deal with it. So we'll see.
Grandizer 12 says the Burger King crown.
Well, nice. Well, to keep our cliche train going with heavy as a crown, with iron sharpens iron, you take it one day at a time in the NFL. So once you get now you're still looking in the future when we talk about the
don't
playoffs.
take it one day at a time. They take it one day at a time. We don't take it one day at a time.
The expectations they're setting, which is playoff win first. So in order to compete for a Super Bowl, you need to first win a playoff game to start advancing into the playoffs. Now, I like what Hyde said, because to take it a step further or prior, you do need to put yourself in the best position by winning the AFC East, getting a home game in the playoffs. So, yes. So first, actually, that should be the first goal. Then that puts you in the best position to win in the playoffs. You don't have to go to a frigid Kansas City or Buffalo or Cincinnati or Baltimore if you play in the friendly confines of Hard Rock Stadium.
Dana Boyce, I keep butchering your name, says, LOL, if they said Super Bowl, you would clown them, Perk. No, I like the Super Bowl talk. This team was assembled to win a Super Bowl. The Gase teams, the Philbin teams, they were assembled to get to the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game. Hopefully you could beat Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and win the AFC East. That's not why you trade for Tyreek Hill. That's not why you sign Teron. That's not why you give up first-round picks for Bradley Chubb and give him this big contract. You extend you restructure Tyreek. You extend Tua. You extend Jalen Waddle. You're trying to win a Super Bowl here. You got to.
Everybody agrees with that. The question is, how should they go about that? Do they come out from the first day, oh, we got to win the Super Bowl, Super Bowl, when they haven't even been close? To me, the mindset would be, let's get past Buffalo. I'm saying that's the goal, and then you reset your goals. That's the first goal you got to hit.
Preliminary goal.
That's the first goal
What's
you got.
What's the end goal this season?
Of
winning
course,
two
winning the Super Bowl.
Realistically,
of course.
Listen, realistically.
Well, you don't win two playoff games and then say, all right, well, we're done with our goals.
No.
We're not going
to
play the AFC Championship game.
Let me say this. Realistically, I think for this era, the Mike McDaniel Tua era, if you get to an AFC Championship game, okay.
It's a success.
Yes.
That's
everybody
a success.
Can't get to a Super Bowl. Everybody can't win a Super Bowl. Let's be realistic. Why not aim big? What's wrong with saying let's try to get to the championship?
You think they're just saying, let's win one, then we're good.
Let me draw a distinction. I think the player, everybody in that building wants to win a Super Bowl. I'm talking about fans and media. Like everybody, I
Perk,
just think,
last year, everybody talked. Oh, they said Super Bowl.
Right.
And to it, we're not afraid to say it.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
They didn't even come close to the Super Bowl.
but it's
the
not
year
because
before,
they were talking about it.
but it didn't help that they were talking about it. It sounds silly. It sounds silly if that's the narrative. Get to the first goal you got to get to. And they didn't get it last year. They didn't win the AFC title. And that made them go. They lost that game in late December against Buffalo, a very winnable game. And they lost that. Now they're on the road and they're hurt and all that. And everybody's, injuries caused it. Well, injuries didn't make them go that bad in December. Okay? So if they have home field, that changes everything. That's where it all starts.
Yeah, I would agree. I just, I would like to.
You want to
state
hear the Super Bowl?
I want to
Okay.
hear the end point. I want to hear where it all ends, not where it all starts. Roger Allman says Crown Royal, the crown. Cat for Life says Furones, facts. Heavy is the crown. You guys crowned them, not us.
Huh.
He-
You
he-
guys being the media?
yeah, maybe.
Who's crowned him?
yeah,
Who's
who
crowned
crowned
Who's picked him to win the Super Bowl?
Well, nobody, but I think the expectation. I think that's what he's talking about. I've got a heavy expectation for this team, a big expectation for this team.
I think we should, based on this roster.
So,
Everybody-
what is what is the expectation?
You've got to win 2 playoff games this year because I
Okay.
look at this as a 3-year run. Yeah, you can't
3-year. This is
or
a
2-year
6-year run. This
Okay,
is 6 years
I do
to
the
get to this point.
That's true. I do the McDaniel Tua era.
I don't. Come on.
So
Come
you
on.
do the. I know you do the whole
I
rebuild.
do.
You
Look,
do the whole rebuild.
I sat through one ridiculous season
Yes.
of sports that I
Yes.
can't believe a team would tank like that. And then the
Well,
second,
Brian Flores won too many games later.
and then the second, well, they didn't even know how to tank. Okay. Everybody said, no, I'm completely serious. If
Yeah.
you're going to tank, tank. Instead, they hired the one coach
Right.
you cannot hire if you're going to do that, and they didn't talk about it. They, and until Stephen Ross talked to him privately and offered him money, and then said he was joking, and that's a whole different story. But the point being, this has been 6 years. This is year 6 of this.
Yeah.
You can't diminish it. Well, we start over when Mike McDaniel came. No. You got all that talent. You inherited that talent because of what came before it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to our favorite segment of the show. It's been requested here, wondering when it's going to come up. It's coming on now. It is the Furones bonus.
Oh, the Furones bonus.
I love it,
Oh,
baby.
we got sound effects.
Yeah. Furones goes off on this thing.
Wait, Dave, you don't watch Ronaldo?
Right. I was trying to make up for. I was trying to make up for that.
Take me
question.
off camera.
I thought you supported us.
I do. I'm 100% behind you.
There we go. Right. You know that sound.
Just not always clicking.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to have a what happens first here in this Furones bonus, and we're going to give 2 scenarios, and we're going to have Furones tell us what happens first. Dave Hyde, you can chime in as well. So here's our first one. What happens first? Tyreek reaches 1,000 yards receiving, or the Dolphins reach 6 wins. Now, as some background, in 2023, Tyreek got 1,000 yards in game 8. The Dolphins were 6-2. In 2022, he got 1,000 yards in game 9. The Dolphins were 6-3. So 6 wins each time he's hit 1,000 yards. In 2022, when the Dolphins reached 6 wins, it took 9 games. In 2023, pretty much what I just said, it took 8 games. So which happens first? David Furones, we'll go to you first. Dolphins get 6 wins, or Tyreek gets 1,000 yards receiving?
Well, thank you. It is my bonus.
It is your
After
bonus.
all.
Right.
Well, I'm going to go with 6 wins, and I think it's going to be a problem if 6 wins does not occur first, because the first half of the year, I could see first 7 games, I could see the Dolphins winning, going 6-1. Let's say starting off, getting there, and then beyond that. So the first half, you have to get your wins there, and then beyond that, I think the ball will be spread out more in this year's offense. Adding Odell Beckham Jr. whenever he can get back onto the field, I think he's getting closer. Bringing in a Jonnu Smith to give you that tight end. I think Devon Achane is going to get the ball thrown at him more out of the backfield. Jalen Waddle should get a better share. So I think a fewer percentage of the targets, although Tyreek Hill should still lead the team in targets, will go to Hill. So I think ball gets spread out more. So I think it'll take Tyreek Hill longer to get to 1,000 yards. And the Dolphins better get to 6 wins quickly against the schedule. A lot of the October schedule is sort of, you could pad on those wins. Right. So I think for those two reasons, it will be a problem if Tyreek Hill gets 1,000 yards first before the Dolphins get to 6 wins.
Hyde, what do you think? Because you were kind of anti-Tyreek 2000, right? Thinking it wasn't good for the team. I thought you were one of those guys thinking.
No.
But you do talk about how tough the schedule is, and they need to get off to a fast
start.
And
I will say this. I'm with David, everything he said. But let's add also to this. Tyreek, the last 2 years, has had 172 targets. That's third in the league, okay? And by the end of the season, you saw last year, he wasn't 100%. One of the goals of the year is to get him to the end of the season where the big games matter 100%. And one way to do that or help that, because he's over 30 now, is to have less targets to him. Spread the ball out more. Do not rely. He's the number one target. He's the number one target in the league. Everybody gets that. You're not going to shy away from getting him the ball, but the volume is something that to keep him healthy at the end of the year, you got to consider.
Mark Jones says, Hyde, preaching the gospel. Grandizer 12 says, what about hype it up with Hyde? Hyde's hype.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
Or the Hyde 5.
Hyde 5. That's what I got.
We always have that. Well, continuing with our Furones bonus here, what happens first? Jalen Phillips gets 3 sacks or Chop Robinson gets 3 sacks? Now, in Jalen Phillips' career last season, it took him 5 games to get to 3 sacks. In 2022, it took him 7 games to get to 3 sacks. In 2021, his rookie year, it took him 11 games to get to 3 sacks. Understanding Jalen might be on a snap count early in the season, who gets 3 sacks first, Jalen Phillips or Chop Robinson?
Well, like you said, it took longest for Phillips, right, if I heard your stats correctly, in his rookie season, correct?
11 games. Last year, it only took 5.
Who's a rookie this year among those two? Chop Robinson. Yep. So even though Jalen Phillips is coming off his Achilles, he's off the PUP list. So I would go with Jalen Phillips. He gets his 3 sacks first. I think he will be ready week 1 to play, maybe on a snap count, but I think he'll deliver with some decent intensity when he is on the field, and then slowly work his way up. And I think for Chop, it'll still be a little bit of an acclimation to the NFL speed of the game, going up against an NFL tackle. So yes, I'll go with Jalen Phillips to get his 3 sacks before Chop Robinson has his first 3.
Hyde, Chop?
Completely back that up completely, because Chop Robinson is coming into one of the, all those defensive line position, tackle, pass rusher is that's a man's job, and it takes a graduate school, usually a year or 2. I look at the defensemen who were picked first last year, and I think a couple of them had 3.5 sacks on the season. Yeah. And those were good, those were decent seasons. So the question is, what's the expectation for Chop Robinson? Okay, as far as sacks, I would think Jalen Phillips has a much better chance of getting to 3, assuming he doesn't have an injury setback.
Right.
And I was talking last year to Andrew Van Ginkel, who's now in Minnesota, and he went through a hot stretch of rushing the passer. He said going into that would have been, year 5 for him, how he had just developed so many moves, pass rushing moves, and also counters, and having a better understanding of how tackles are going to block him. I think you develop that over time. So Chop, he has the natural physical tools. I think it'll still take some time to develop the consistency in the pass rush of understanding how tackles are trying to block you, and he works on some of his moves. Maybe a chop move. Maybe Chop's chop move.
The chop. What do you think? We got that? You got that nickname set up.
That's a chicken kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Chop.
Yeah.
Chicken kitchen.
Is that our next sponsor?
Why do you think I said it? The next question here on the Furones bonus, what happens first? A Dolphins tight end has a receiving touchdown, or a Dolphins running back has a 100-yard rushing game? As some background, I'm only going back these last couple of years. Last year, 0 receiving touchdowns for a Dolphins tight end. 2 years ago, they had 6 receiving touchdowns. Gesicki had 5. Durham Smythe had 1. The first tight end touchdown receiving came in game 2. Last year, as far as the 100-yard rushing games, Mostert had 1 in game 2. 2 years ago, Mostert had 1 in game 5. We know the Dolphins want to use the tight end more. Furones, Dolphins tight end has a receiving touchdown first, or a Dolphins running back has a 100-yard rushing game first?
I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm saying the tight end gets the touchdown first because I think it's going to happen in the opener. Ooh. I think maybe even the first touchdown of the season is to the tight end to get off the schneid early. You went through a whole year where the tight end didn't have a touchdown, so maybe it's Jonnu Smith being that new toy for Mike McDaniel to use at that position. Hey, maybe Durham Smythe. Shoot, last year's opener in L.A., Durham Smythe was open in the end zone for a touchdown, and Tua also had River Craycraft open in the same line of sight. So he threw over Durham Smythe to get the ball to River Craycraft. He could have had.
He hates the tight end.
He could have had the touchdown from the very beginning.
You're right.
So
that's right.
I think a similar situation. Maybe even Julian Hill. He's been a camp standout.
He's had the orange jersey.
He's 6'4". He can go up and get the ball over a defender, something that the Dolphins need. So I think a tight end gets it in week 1, so that even if a running back gets to 100 yards in that opener, that's by the end of the game. All right, a tight end's getting it maybe on the opening drive of the season.
Yeah. Hyde, I know you're big on tight end involvement.
I do. I think the tight end will be the number one way to upgrade this offense as far as part of it's because look where they're coming from, 0 touchdowns. But also, I think they realize we need to involve the tight end in the offense more. And who better to do it? Mike McDaniel's been creative. But for the sake of the show, I'll say 100 yards rushing.
You got Thank you, Hyde. Thank you. You're saving us.
I'm just thinking of you, Perk.
We're going down the drain.
Look, they got a lot of guys who can do it, but they're going to come out that first game and you've seen they can be very productive running the ball, especially against defenses that are scared to death of Tyreek Hill, as Jacksonville I'm sure will, because the question with Jacksonville's defense is who are their cornerbacks and how are they going to hold up. So I'll go with Mostert going over 100 in the first game.
I also just feel it's so much of a timeshare, this backfield for the Dolphins. So at the beginning of last year, it was pretty much Mostert, and then Achane, he got incorporated really week 3 against Denver in a big way. But he only had his first 2 carries that week 2 game, and Jeff Wilson wasn't working in that much. Now they also added Jalen Wright, so it's just going to be, I think, a lot of spread out carries as well, keeping these guys fresh so that you don't have a Mostert injury at the end of the year like you had for the Baltimore and Buffalo game.
One of the interesting things I thought Mostert said at the start of training camp was he went to Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator. He said, "Why don't we? I want to have be incorporated in the passing game more." And so it's so true that Mostert. I was curious. Does he not have good hands or what? Because they really didn't involve him in. And if you're looking, how can we expand the? There's one way to get the defenses off kilter a little. That now you got to protect. You got to pass cover him too. We'll see if that happens, but it was just interesting that he saw, I want to expand my role.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to do that with Achane as well, getting him more involved in the passing game. I spoke with him this offseason about how he's lining up at receiver, running more routes, getting with the receivers on how to run effective routes. So definitely, and we've seen some practices. There was a 2-minute drill where Tua almost threw exclusively to Achane. So, I think
you can see the matchup hell they'll cause with Hill and Waddle wide. Then they move Achane somewhere if OBJ comes back. But regardless, they got another Mostert's a sprinter too. So somebody's going to be going to get matched up with a linebacker, running backs probably, or a third safety or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see, how teams decide to cover these guys.
A couple of things here from the Furones bonus. Cap for Life says a Hyde segment. We have to do a Hyde segment called Denied by Hyde. And he also says the Rave with Dave. I like those.
I think Furones bonus tops anything, right? I'm not going to get in that elite status of names like the Furones bonus.
All we have to do is come up with a sound effect.
Maybe we just tape his. In fact, just a video of him doing it.
Exactly. Matt Newton says the Dolphins are talking about Tyreek and the 6 wins versus 1,000 yards. The Dolphins will be 6-0, so he'd have to get that 1,006 games. And as a counterpart to that,
optimism, love it.
Lo-Fi Anime NFT, I hope I'm not butchering that, says I lost this one. It was about spreading it out on the offense, basically saying Tyreek getting 2,000 was last year. They've got to spread it out this year. What do you got? I thought Tyreek getting 2,000 was good. I thought he could get it within the offense and it would be good. What's a good number for Tyreek, do you guys think? A good winning number, good number for the Dolphins and Tyreek?
Oh, he had 1799 last year.
Yeah.
I mean, 1,500 will be fine if it also results in everyone else having an increase in their production. If Jalen Waddle is back up into the 13, maybe even 1,400 range, then that would be phenomenal. If Tyreek Hill brings it down to 1,500, Jalen Waddle sees a little bit of an uptick, and then you get some tight end and running back receiving production.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about Tyreek getting numbers or causing nightmares for opposing defensive coordinators, because that's there. As long as he's healthy, that's going to be there. The numbers will take care of it. It's the other guys. You know, Jonnu Smith hasn't really played with the best quarterback he played with was Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee.
Yep.
And Tannehill's average at best about in his career, and it went all the way down to Desmond Ridder last year in Atlanta. And so for the first time, he's in a passing offense. So the numbers to me are his numbers and OBJ's numbers and all the other playmakers. Tyreek's going to be the number one guy, and his numbers will take care of themselves.
Mark Heavy, welcome to the show. Be Stuck the Poet, welcome to the show. Pete's Takes in here. Trinity Soundworks, Matt Newton, welcome everybody to the show for our final segment. And we're going to get into a lot of questions here from our viewers, as well as answering this question. Is Mike McDaniel a training camp revolutionary, or is he just being soft on the Dolphins? Dave Hyde, I know you've got very good thoughts on this. You've researched this a little bit. What do you think, and what do you think is the correct approach?
Yeah, I just finished a special section column on this.
Yep.
So, I don't know what the right they're pushing the envelope, though. So maybe in 5 years, this is the norm, where you rotate a handful of players out of practice. You've seen the contrast right there when they do these joint practices. Atlanta Falcons are running sprints after practice. The Dolphins are just, walking off. A Falcon official walked by me and said, do they do this every day? So that tells you it is different, okay?
Yeah.
And Mike McDaniel is known to think out of the box, and to his credit, not follow the norm just to follow the norm. I think all of the NFL is having a light bulb go off on preseason.
Yep.
You see how they're playing. Yep. So they're rethinking preseason.
Right.
The question to me with this team, this particular team, is you got Jordan Poyer coming in at the start of training camp and saying the knock on the Dolphins was they fold in tough moments.
Right.
So you have to toughen this team up.
Right.
How do you toughen them up? And at the same time, you have Mike McDaniel's way, and again, I don't know what's right and what's wrong, but of trying to preserve their bodies, and you don't have to do sprints. You don't have to do a lot of the normal stuff that you do to make a team tougher. Okay. Now, Mike, I asked Mike about this, and he said, "Look, if we don't do sprints and other stuff, we can have infinite number of more reps on the important stuff." So there's a trust with the team that they're going to work hard on all that other stuff. So, but to me, that's the needle they're trying to thread. Get tougher, while not doing a lot of the normal stuff that teams do to get tougher.
Is Mike McDaniel a revolutionary? And is this a feast or famine? Is there a successful middle ground here for Fonus?
I think so. And what Mike McDaniel is a coach leading a team in 2024. This is just the way things are going. This is what it's going to be. It's why a lot of veterans take OTAs and mini camp off, all especially when it's voluntary, and even when it's mandatory mini camp, they just show up. It's not like they're actually participating in any drills. They're preserving themselves for the games and when it counts. And Mike McDaniel is also a guy who listens to science and what maybe doctors are telling him. Now, is it all correct? We don't know. I think they all don't even know for sure, because then also there's the contrary argument of, are you getting the necessary ramp up for these athletes to go all out in regular season games once week one comes around? And then the Dolphins also, they've had a track record of a lot of injuries once they do get to those real games. So which one is correct? Yeah, you don't want players to get injured in meaningless preseason games, that's for sure. And Jalen Ramsey last training camp, yeah, that's the worst thing that happens is he's injured practicing. But then he's going hard this training camp, and we've seen him. Now he's dealing with a little bit something right now, but seems like he'll be fine. But Tyreek Hill, his first training camp in Miami, he went really hard all camp, and he turned out fine, sans a few cramps and whatnot. But outside of that, he stays healthy. When he got hurt last year, it was because of a hip drop tackle. Almost called like a hip hop or hop drip tackle, hip drop tackle, which will be emphasized now. We have learned in discussions with officials recently. Which one is correct? We don't really know, but this is the route they're going. It eliminates or it diminishes a lot of the probability of injuries in the meaningless preseason, but then are they getting the necessary ramp up?
And the other question, look, the NFL doesn't have the answer. Andy Reid reportedly is going to play his starters half in preseason game number 2. Meanwhile, you got teams like the Eagles, Tennessee. I don't know what the Dolphins are. We don't know exactly what they're going to do. But Indianapolis sitting out starters completely. So even the people with all the information, there's a differing ideas on what to do right now. That's why when the NFL is rethinking preseason on what it means.
In the biggest copycat league. So can't even agree what to copy.
Lofi says McDaniel is too soft. Evidence when the scheme was figured out and execution becomes your difference maker. We fell off in the final stretch. Here's what I think. I hope Mike McDaniel is right as far as the reduced workload, because I think a lot of the off season, the OTAs, the mini camp, the long training camp, I think that's just babysitting so that you know where the players are. I hope that Mike McDaniel is correct and the off season, the time that the players have to be there, gets reduced. On the other hand, when you talk about being ready, he's had them ready, right? They started off 8-3, 9-3. Yep. The toughness thing, I would like to see the whole Dolphins toughness thing, and I don't think it comes from training camp. I think it comes from a mentality, and Mike McDaniel doesn't call a tough game, right? If you're tough on 3rd and 1, run it down their throat. Don't do a jet sweep. Don't do a zone run. Run it down their throat. 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. We have no respect for you. We're running it down your throat. To me, that's a tough mentality. That's better than putting a big hit on somebody and cowering over him. Oh,
but are we overthinking the interior of the line then? This gets back to what we talked earlier in the show, right?
You can't finesse a physical sport. They're kind of trying. They're kind of, but you can't. So that's kind of where I am on that. I just think that the toughness isn't going to come from long training camp workouts, or it's going to be a mentality more than anything. What Jordan Poyer was saying, what happens when somebody punches you in the mouth. Now, how you incorporate that mentality, I don't know, but I do think that play calling on offense and defense are part of it. I mean, do you guys think that Anthony Weaver and Vic Fangio and Josh Boyer and Mike McDaniel have called aggressive games over the last can't say Anthony Weaver, but over the last 2 years, have the offense and defense played aggressive?
I thought the defense did last year.
I thought the defense
and
it did under Boyer too. It just
Boyer was a more aggressive defense.
He overplayed that game.
If you say blitzing is aggressive, but there's a lot of other ways to be aggressive and physical.
Right, he was a man-to-man guy. Fangio was a zone guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's Fangio's method that's copied throughout the league.
And I like Fangio. So
same here. I looked at the results. They had a dominant defense for about 14 weeks in there until they lost their team there at the end of the season. But
week 4 against Buffalo.
Yeah, the first couple weeks they weren't in play, and then they found stride. So the question becomes, and this gets back to Mike McDaniel's way. Okay, what happened? The secondary didn't like Fangio. That was obvious. Okay, and so what happens? Not only does Fangio go it was mutual. Fangio wanted out. The Dolphins wanted him out. But also both secondary coaches went out too, including Sam Madison. Okay, and so all of a sudden you get new secondary coaches. And what was Weaver's, in his opening press conference, he made a point of saying that Jalen Ramsey, the chess piece, we're going to move him around. Why wouldn't you move him around? So, again, telling the players what they want to hear. And that's Mike McDaniel's way is a happy player is a better player. Right. And again, this is, as you said, the modern way. That's the way that a lot of guys, there aren't many hardcore disciplinarians in the league anymore. You'd be hard-pressed to find one.
Yeah.
So that's what, but Mike McDaniel is pressing the envelope of embracing the players. It would never happen in a Nick Saban, Jimmy Johnson, Don Shula era to hear the quarterback say, this isn't Mike's team. This isn't the coach's team. This is Mike's team.
Right, exactly.
And that's what we're hearing.
Exactly. Grandizer 12 has a question here. Which Dolphins player is on the hot seat going into this game? One name from each of the panel, if possible. I'll go first. Do I want to say Mike White? I'm going to say Mike White. And I don't think the Dolphins have a backup quarterback problem, but Skyler is knocking on the doorstep. He's to take that number 2 job now. I thought Mike White gave some good insight on his goal for the last preseason game when he said, I was trying to keep everybody calm in the huddle, and that sounds like a cop-out. I thought, the dude is crazy, but I went back and listened to the tape, and I thought, you know what, he's right. And he said he knew before the game he'd be out there with a bunch of guys who are rookies, who have never been in an NFL huddle, and a bunch of other guys who are veterans who are stressing making the 53. I want to calm them down, let them know, just execute, just do your job. And he said that's what guys are looking for when the backup quarterback comes in. And I was like, that's brilliant. This is a guy who was a good backup quarterback with the Jets. And 2 years ago when Skyler came in, these guys were looking around the huddle like, oh my gosh, like, oh my. So I thought that was a brilliant answer. Let's see if Skyler, if he's in the Mike White position of playing with, a bunch of, free agent rookies or youngsters or guys who are sweating out making the 53. Let's see if he can keep them calm. So I'm going to say Mike White and Skyler, but I'll say Mike White because he's the number 2 and he might lose his job. So, Hyde, I know you're big on Chop facing starters, but who do you think is the most under?
Well, Chop, we're just talking about how much impact he can have the starter. But making team or a guy, if we're going to put it that position, Quentin Bell. We talked about him, made headlines early in camp. He's the best. And then falling off. Yeah, I haven't heard. And I was out at practice a couple times, not as much as you guys, but I didn't notice him. And so the question, where was he an early camp wonder and had trouble maintaining that? But I think for this game he would need to do something for the coaches to have trust to put him out there at the starting game.
Yeah, and that gets into my early season question of the pass rush. Like he might be a big part of it. Furones, who do you think?
I have a couple of others. Cam Smith I'll go with for one.
Very good one.
I wrote about him this week that this is an ultra important week, or a couple of weeks for him this preseason. Now, is he on a hot seat? I mean, he wasn't really in the position to play last year at all, so only up from here, right, in Weaver system. But he's got to show that last year was last year because he was in Fangio's doghouse, and that he's ready to be that second-round pick, a cornerback that can emerge for this secondary. So he's got a critical couple of weeks, especially since he missed time earlier in camp. So now he's returned to practice, and then these 2 games will be huge for him. And then the other one I'll say is Eric Ezukanma, because a 4th-round pick, and then he was only active for 1 game his rookie year, and then after a couple weeks his sophomore season, then he goes on the non-football injury list for the rest of the year, and then he has missed time earlier in camp. So and plus has had drops in camp. So he's got to show up in preseason games like he did maybe that Philadelphia preseason game a couple of years ago, and he had a big game. Where Tua brought him into the podium, shouting out his name. Right. I got a video of that moment, which that must have been great for that young man. But that's really the highlight of his career at this point. Yep. So I mean, give us some moments in the preseason to show that you really belong on this team.
We got to talk about Tua. So Be Stuck the Poet says, forgive me if you've answered this. Does Tua dropping weight mean he'll hold the ball longer and move away from the quick passing game? What does that do for play calling, injury potential, scheme? I'll go first. I don't think that Tua is going to hold the ball longer. I think that that's kind of a major contributing factor to those concussions 2 years ago. Here's what I think about Tua losing the weight. For these purposes, we'll say that agility is moving east-west and mobility is moving north. I think it's going to help his agility. I don't think you want Tua going north very often, the mobility. So I think he's trying to sidestep some pass rushes and still get the ball out quick. But I don't see the lost weight. I don't see one of the purposes of it so that Tua can go north. I think east-west is more realistic. Furones, what do you think?
Certainly, yeah. He's still going to be a pass-first quarterback.
Yeah.
He's made that much very clear, especially in a recent interview with Kay Adams, who visited camp. So and that much we knew for Tua. That's got to be where his focus is first. And then just in the moments where, okay, when you don't get the ball out quickly and then you're going through progressions and now the pressure starts to hit, if you can bust it out then, that newfound mobility, if it's there, go ahead. Yeah, that's where you use it, and use it to extend a play, so then you can throw another receiver open with those extra seconds that you buy yourself. So more so than running the ball himself.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they don't want him running the ball, and he doesn't have the speed, he doesn't have the size, and he has the health issues, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, if he can take a half step to the left or 2 steps to the right to avoid something, maybe this allows him to be a little quicker.
Richard Thompson says, Dave Hyde is the only one holding the Dolphins management accountable. I wish the other 2 would take a lesson. Wow, how about that?
How about that? Go and defend yourself.
I hold Mike McDaniel more responsible than Chris Greer. He's a sacred cow in this town, right? Like, people go after Pat Riley more than. Wait
a second.
I'm not going after Mike McDaniel. I'm saying that I think that he needs to call a more aggressive game, a more aggressive style, and he need the offensive play. You know, I have a big problem with the offensive play calling. I like the offense. I like the players. I like Mike McDaniel. You got to tweak the system here.
Yeah, I thought you were the one. I'm not sure what this viewer's talking about, because I thought you were the one that said if he doesn't win a playoff game next year, going back last year, then you put him on the hot seat next year.
Hot seat. That still applies.
So
that still applies. Not that he needs to be fired, but yes, he would be on the hot seat.
Well,
yeah.
if the hot seat, there's a potential of being fired.
There is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
there is. I'm not saying
afterward,
we'll see where we are in December.
Right. We have to. Right. Well, let's get there, but. They need some success this season, and if not, somebody should be held accountable. I'm not saying
it won't be the general manager for life.
Yeah, you're very anti Chris Greer.
No, I'm not anti. I'm just saying.
I'm putting words in his mouth.
Right. I know. That's what we do as the media, right?
When is somebody accountable? Right.
I mean,
how many years has this gone on before you say, wait a second, what's the issue here? And so. I'm not anti-Chris Greer. It looks like he had a decent draft this year so far. I mean, the first
you're
baby
disappointing Richard Thompson. You just said you're hard on management. Don't go
first baby steps are the first time in years. This was set up from the start of this 6 years ago. I wrote a column saying Chris Greer it's all on him. They put everything on him, on a guy. Right. This wasn't even his plan. He just went along with it. Right. Okay, and so. But either he's going to the Hall of Fame because he's going to pick great picks. He's been afforded a lot of first-round picks, a lot of money. They're going to assemble a great team. Or you're going to come out of this saying, they just wasted another 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, how many years ever? So
let me ask
you. To put a ball on this segment, this question, Chris Greer now at this point has assembled the greatest Dolphins roster we've seen in more than 20 years now. I mean, going to the 90s. You guys tell me about the 90s, how you would compare the roster, just the roster itself. But then also, why hasn't this team been able to win in the postseason? Well, every year it's the injury excuse, reason. If you want to call it an excuse, call it a reason.
I'm with the Bill Parcells line. Bill Parcells line. There's always an excuse there if you want to take it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, then, well, part of that is a lot of injury-prone players, as you've written in the past. So, how's that for holding them accountable, huh?
Like it.
Why is the roster so injured come the postseason?
Well, okay. Let me ask you guys this. Because Chris Greer does not have a philosophy, right? Chris Greer goes with whatever the head coach says. And so when you have Joe Philbin, you have this philosophy for 3 years. Adam Gase, you have this philosophy. The flow thing was a disaster. Now you've got a new philosophy. Do you need a GM who says, this is how we win, this is our system, I'm recruiting a head coach and a quarterback to the system, or should you remain flexible like Chris Greer?
Well, look, they did a 180-degree turn.
Right.
And that cost wasted draft picks and wasted players, wasted money. So how does Chris Greer think you win in the NFL? I have no
We don't
idea.
know, right.
I have
We
no
don't know.
idea.
We
Other
don't
than
know.
we'll pick good players.
In another couple weeks, you can ask him that there.
Well,
because we actually don't have that answer.
He'll give us the offensive line answer. You guys are way more worried about that than I am.
yeah. So I would prefer a guy. You know what? They needed him to stand up at times in this rebuild and say, "This is the way we're going. This is why we're doing it." Instead, he just went along with the flow, and
That's not his personality to do that.
Okay, but that is what this team needed. If they were going to go down this route, tanking, we got all these decisions. Brian Flores, do we hire him or not? And it's just amazing. So Brian Flores was an awful hire, people say, okay? And yet who hired him? Who was responsible? That wasn't him alone,
Right.
but someone who's responsible for that. Anybody? If Brian Flores cost them so dearly in this rebuild,
Right.
nobody's
Why was he
accountable
hired?
for that?
Right.
So, you know, and I would prefer a GM, you know where he stands on certain things, and he stands with the coach. Whatever coach
Right.
wants to do, I'm gonna follow that. And
Yeah.
and I get giving the coach players he wants, but they're just so diametrically opposed to a lot of these things that.
That you can't use a lot of the players the previous coach had.
Right.
And so you have to do this whole cycle. It's like college football. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
Before turnover.
The defenses now have gone back and forth a little bit. Now we're hoping Weaver is kind of like a middle ground
Right.
between what Boyer and Flores' defenses were and Fangio last year.
Right. Scotty Joe 22 says, geez, this offense has been super tweaked. Remember the crap we used to have. I agree. So let's win. Right? Like you do have the best talent that you've had, so let's win. And Chris Greer did his part. Now Mike McDaniel has to do his part, and the players have to do their part. I'm not letting Chris Greer off the hook, but he has assembled quite a bit of talent here. So let's win.
You know, in my job, these guys are Dolphin all the time. I've covered the Panthers a lot the last couple of years because they did win and they won a lot. And it's fascinating to watch their franchise work. They had the best regular season record 3 years ago. They had such a fun, high-scoring, wild offense. Fans were chanting, "We want 10 at games." Okay, 10 goals. And yet they struggled in the playoffs, and the GM Bill Zito fired the coach and brought it, said, "We cannot win this way. We cannot win this. It's too fun."
Right.
And you get to the playoffs, it's a physical, mental game, and you got to have the right team. And I'm not there with the Dolphins yet, but because you know what, they're a lot of fun to watch, as was just written. They're a lot of fun to watch but they got to be tougher. They got to be able to play tougher, and they say it inside. And again, the Panthers model is interesting. They said we got to get tougher. We have this fun offense. It's fun to watch. But if you want to go deeper in the playoffs, we got to change our style. And will Mike McDaniel change at all to a different style this season? Not to take away from, we know what the strengths of the offense are, okay? But will they add the component of toughness?
And Perka, to Hyde's point, and let me ask you this because I know it'll get you going, right?
Okay, let's do it. Let's get me going.
Do you believe this is why the fan base isn't as hard on Dolphins management?
Yes.
Because it's so fun.
100%. I think that there's an era of Dolphins fans that's like, just entertain me. That Mike McDaniel is a funny guy. I love Tua. I love the end zone celebrations. Tyreek is funny. I love the waddle. Entertain me. Like, I understand that everybody can't win. These guys are good for my fantasy team. They're good for my gambling. Just entertain me, and I'm fine. And like I've said, finish this sentence for me. If the Dolphins don't win a playoff game this year, ... I'm not saying Mike McDaniel must be fired or Tua must take a pay cut.
But we can't finish that sentence until
know.
we watch the season play out. What's the reason for that?
Okay, but what's a legitimate excuse for that? Like
It's got to happen now.
We saw San Francisco go win playoff games with Brock Purdy, right? Their rookie 7th round quarterback. We saw Nick Foles win a Super Bowl. He was a backup before then. He was a backup after then.
You're leading right into my my column on backup quarterbacks was talk like
well,
that.
Philadelphia had a
Make sure
system.
you check that on
The thing
Sentinel.com.
is, yes, do check that. Philadelphia had a system in place that enabled the quarterback to succeed, right? San Francisco, a system in place that enables Brock Purdy to succeed. They could let Nick Foles succeed. The Dolphins, you've got to have a better team. You can't just win on 50-yard passes because the good teams shut that down, and then what do you have? And so it's fine to be entertaining. I'm not sure that that's winning football. Only one team in NFL history has won with speed, and that's those Rams, the greatest show on turf. And nobody else has done it. And I appreciate Mike McDaniel, respect him, like him. He's trying to be a revolutionary, also with the speed, with the reduced practices. After 2 years, I think it's time to tweak the system. That's what I think. So, anyway, what else have we got here before we get out of here? I'm trying to see what we've got here. Oh, okay. Pretty Boy says, all of this toughness talk. To play football, you have to be tough, guys. These players aren't soft. Maybe he says are soft. He says we can't be a ground and pound team if we're not built that way. LOL. We have to play to our strengths. I see what he's saying, that this is not a tough team. This is not a ground and pound team, but you're in a tough sport.
But if okay, you're putting it all on McDaniel. If you have a general manager over who's not just going to say, oh, you want another speed guy? We got you another speed guy. Yeah. Who says, let's sit down. We need to add a component we don't have. And maybe they have it. Maybe we haven't seen it. We'll see how the season plays out. But that's where you need some direction and saying, we love what you're doing here as far as quick strikes and all that. But as Tyreek Hill said at the start of the season, we had to have 12 play drives, 10 play drives, 13 play drives. So when the pretty ball isn't out there some days, we can still win games.
Yep. A couple of more here. Eric Salazar says, who will start on our O-line when September comes? I think you're probably going to see Liam Eichenberg at center, right?
Yeah.
Because Aaron Brewer,
I think he should be back by
you
week
think he'll
one.
be back?
Yeah.
And so then Liam is your starting right guard, Robert Jones
left
your
guard.
starting left guard. Teron Armstead, how many games will he play this year? What do you think, 12, 10? I mean, the big thing is
it's the strangest career ever because traditionally we're told, oh, you want to get your 5 offensive linemen practice in. They need the rhythm.
Right.
You talk about
and
Teron Armstead has redone that.
Yep.
He never practices. I shouldn't say never because he did, but practically never.
Right, correct.
And yet
he's going to the Pro Bowl. He's going to Pro Bowls. He's effective. Doesn't look like you were going to finish that.
No, I'm with you. I'm mystified. I'm mystified that he can keep playing at that level. He's like unique in that regard.
Right.
But do you trust him that he's going to be there in December and January when you really need him?
Yeah, you want him from Thanksgiving on, right? I mean,
maybe you sit him out the first half of the year.
You know what?
I thought of that.
Me too. Here's the thing: if you want to. Don't take training camp practices off. Give him a quarter against, Seattle or something like that.
No,
right?
You'd have to give him the game off. Just say, stay home.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't have the answers because both of those are shaky ideas. But we don't have the answers. But we're trying. Mike McDaniel is smarter than us. I'll admit that. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this edition. We have run over. We appreciate everybody joining us. That's Dave Hyde. That's David Furones. I'm Chris Perkins. We will see you next time. Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk on SunSentinel.com.